Hello, I'm Axel Torvenius. I'm creative director at Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
And I'm Jens Andersson, design director.
So let's go with the first question. Todd Howard is mentioned a lot of times as producer of the game. How much influence did he had on the story, how the game evolves?
So we are extremely happy working with Todd, and the initial idea comes from Todd Howard. He had this long-term vision or ambition to make an Indiana Jones game, specifically the Great Circle narrative. He then pitched that to Lucasfilm Games. Lucasfilm Games were equally excited and said, yes, this sounds interesting. Todd Howard then came to MachineGames asking, guys, are you up for an adventure? It's like, yes, we are. And that's how the project landed with us. So we are extremely happy, excited, and honored to be able to work with Todd Howard and Lucasfilm Games to make the game actually happen.
Can you go into detail on some of the challenges you faced when you went from doing Wolfenstein games to this new or established IP movie?
Absolutely, I can talk to some of the points. We do have an extremely long history of making first-person shooters. I dare to say that MachineGames are experts in the field in terms of making tight first-person shooters. Switching that mentality within the team has been interesting. It's been a challenge. It's not been easy. But again, nothing in life is easy, worth pursuing, right? So, I mean, it's so many different aspects of going from that type of game setup to what we're doing with this adventure title. Specifically when it comes to things like open-ended scenarios. The game has a mix between open areas and more linear locations. And that's something that has been refreshing and new for us, but also challenging.
Yeah, there's always a challenge to go from your muscle memory, like building these really intense first-person shooters, and then suddenly you're gonna try something a little bit different. And I think even more importantly, the game we are making is different in many ways. There's nothing really out there. It's an adventure first game, but it combines all these genres, all these gameplay mechanics, and really understanding that it takes time. Like you can have an idea, but on a big team everyone has their own ideas. You really need to get it into the game before people can really see what we're doing, and that's definitely been a challenge. I remember we coined the term a MachineGames adventure a few years ago, and that was really useful for us when we talked about the game, because like the MachineGames part had the cinematic aspect of it, the action, the strong story. But what's an adventure version of that? That's kind of where we started to find what this game was really about, adding the puzzles, adding the hand-to-hand, adding this iconic character with a matinee style humor and his whip, and really finding what that game is.
And to add to that is also, if we were to back up a number of years saying that we were going to do a game with the technology that we've been developing, making jungles and dense vegetation or snow-peaked Himalayas, we would be not laughing at ourselves, but we would be, wow, that's a challenge. But that's what we've been, trying to do. We have this iteration, an in-house engineered and altered version of the id Tech engine, which has allowed us to build the game that we want to make, to be able to have those lush jungles and all the challenges that comes with it.
In the presentation, you already mentioned that you worked closely with Lucasfilm Games. Can you go into detail how much creative freedom did you have? Like, were there situations where you talked to them and like they did say Indy can't do that, Indy shouldn't do that, or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been working with Lucasfilm Games continuously throughout the entire production cycle. We've been having different instances at MachineGames and different instances within Lucasfilm Games in terms of their representatives has been on weekly based meetings, basically. And luckily, we was from the get-go very aligned in terms of what is the adventure that we want to create, what is the Indiana Jones that we want to portray. We did early on analyze and making sure that what is building this character, what is core to the IP, and we have been trying to act upon that. And that has rhymed and been in sync with what Lucasfilm Games also feel. And then obviously we've been seeking their guidance and knowledge throughout the entire process. They are the experts on this IP. So obviously there's been situations where we've been thinking maybe this or maybe that, and they have guided us saying like, yeah, maybe, you know, more towards that or less towards that. But we've never been in situations really where we have suggested very crazy weird things and Lucasfilm has said, oh no, because for us it's never been about that, because when you do look at the original IP and the original character, it becomes pretty clear that you have a framework to work within, and that has always been the goal.
Troy Baker did an amazing job so far on the voice acting side. Were there any instances where you thought about asking, or did you ask Harrison Ford to do the voice acting himself, or?
Troy Baker was one of the most obvious choices when we did have the casting and casting sessions. His performance came out very early on as a very clear, obvious choice. Harrison Ford has not been directly involved with the project. His team has been informed throughout the campaign, made aware of what's happening with the product that we are developing. But we are just extremely happy with Troy's performance. And first time I heard the lines coming through from Troy making the impression of a young Harrison Ford, I thought, oh yeah, that was the reference lines from a young Harrison Ford. It's like, no, that was actually Troy Baker. It's like, oh my God, are you kidding me? It's like that's how good we felt it was from the get-go with Troy. So he's a real champion to have on this project. He's a real hero.
I wanted to ask about puzzles, because in the presentation you mentioned a bit about the camera helps with clues if you're stuck at some puzzle. Do you get a hint system or something that tunes down the difficulty of the puzzles?
Kind of, yes. There are a separate difficulty level for that we call the adventure difficulty level, and part of that is simplifying the puzzles for the players who are not really interested in that part. We want this game to be as accessible for as many people as possible, but the default experience is that we do want to have challenging puzzles, and there's a wealth of them throughout the game, small ones and big ones, and some of them are mandatory, but many are also very optional, which makes it possible to make them even more challenging. For the bigger ones, we also built this kind of hint system, because the worst thing that can happen is someone gets stuck and have to sort of break the immersion, go to YouTube to find the solution. So this is where we are using the in-this camera and the journal. So basically you can pick up the camera and you can take a photograph of the puzzle, and if you keep repeating that, you get additional information, hints from Indy himself on what he, some clues of how you can progress.
Gina seems to be a big part in the campaign and the story. Two questions: is she vulnerable? Can she die in the story, or is it just a character that pops up and helps you or talks to you?
Gina is an extremely big part of the entirety of the campaign. You meet up and team up with her fairly early on in the game, and then she travels along on this adventure together with you. She has her own story arc that she's tracking, and obviously part of her story arc is aligning with your story arc, so you're like entwined in this thing together to the bitter end. But she's not really, she's vulnerable, but she's a strong character, and she's not really dying.
Okay.
Yeah, as again, it's an adventure-first game, so there are moments where she participates in combat, but that's not the focus of the gameplay when you are playing with Gina or the character. So she helps in combat. She can get down, but no, you don't have to manage her health or anything like that.
Okay. You had different endings and decisions in your Wolfenstein games. Are they gonna come back in Indiana Jones?
We are taking a different approach with Indiana Jones. One thing that we feel is really important is to build on the sense of exploration, is that you can complete everything in the game on a single save slot. Basically, you start off with a blank journal. Like you've seen the journal in the presentation. It's a very important tool where you gather notes about everything, like your whole journey throughout the adventure. But it's also tied so that when you find the final note, you've also, completed everything there's to complete in the game. So that's kind of the overall structure focus for this game.
Mm-hmm. In the presentation, you already mentioned some locations that gonna be in the game. How did you choose the locations that pop up in the game, or based on what?
There are several reasons for the locations. Some of them are part of this greater mystery that the narrative is circling around. The main focus has also been to try to get as many different biomes and variety in environments not only just through environmental context, but also when it comes to time of day and different weather conditions. All of that, of course, is together weaving, a very multifaceted visual story that for us, when we look at references from the early movies, is also something that is key to the Indiana Jones IP. You get to see different places in the world, you get to experience a lot of different cool crypts and ruins and tombs. So it's been core to us to make sure that visual variation and get that kind of visual pacing is important, and each different location has its own subset of opportunities in terms of gameplay opportunities or interesting adventure beats. So it's been a natural element in the early process of the game to try to be as varied as possible when it comes to that.
As final question, I think you can answer it both differently. When you can pick one feature of the game or one new element you integrated into it, what would you present to players, or would we really like to players to see or feel or experience?
Start.
Very good questions. There are so many of them.
And I can start by not really answering the question, because there's so much variation in this game, and that's also one of the goals we have. I could answer the whip, because it's one of the most fundamental features. You use it to traverse, you use it in combat. It's a multi-useful tool, but there are so many of these, and that's kind of the point. There are stealth, there's puzzles, there's items like the camera. There's just a ton of them, and we all want them to be part of the overall experience. Any one of them individually wouldn't really hold up, but together that's the experience.
To bring forth two components potentially would be Troy's performance and his presence, and everything that goes into the cutscene work that the cinematic team back at MachineGames are doing. That's absolutely killer. The audio team that we have, just the ambience and the work that we're doing with Todd Howard in terms of composing new scores for this game has also been just mind-blowing. It's like a few of those beats, but there are so many. It's visual designs, there's the tech behind. You know, there are so many different beats that we would like to bring forth. But in the end, it's like all of it coming together and forming the adventure that we basically want to present.
Okay, thank you. It was great.
Thank you.